When it's called the beginning of a din, they start arguing. They put on. They used to put on a talis and sit really. That's when. Do you know that? You know that the Goyim copied us. They wear a robe that comes from the Eden. Do you know that? The robe. The judge wears a robe. They wear a tichel? Yeah. But that comes from the Eden. The robe comes from the Eden. They used to put on a special talis. They're going to bring it down. They used to put on a talis, to show this is be'ema.
When did they stop it?
The Goyim, didn't want us to do that. They said you could judge yourself, but don't act like a judge. Don't have these things. And Shun. Sivam, Simav, let's move on. Ein Hadayonim Yoishvin Ludim Bedin Posam Shuva Prita. It's very interessant. You can't call someone Posam Shuva Prita. It's very interessant halacha, but it means that we could Bezdin Kavua Shebeir. Bezdin that has to take any case. Like I told you, what's the biggest problem we have nowadays? If you don't have a few $1,000 case, there's no one to call home with. Where are you going to go to? It costs you who knows how much money.
How much is a pruta now?
How much is what? A pruta? Depends on the silver. How much is silver now? $35. Then it's about 8 cents or 9 cents. A pruta.
So it went up recently?
Silver went down, you mean, not up. Silver used to be up a year ago much higher. Okay. Is enadun yoshiludim benim posum shuva prita v'im hiskiki. Once they started the shuva prita, gomrim doing a posum shuva prita. Imagine it's a whole sugya about this. I mean, not so much they gave us, but it shows that the person. I'm going to tell you an interesting thing. I told a young man today. Young man comes to me today. He was a shadchan, and he tells me that they told him that if you pull through this shidduch, the guy tells him, I'm going to pay you, make sure you get paid. What is that? That each tzad is going to pay you, and I'll make sure it's, let's say they'll pay you $1,000 or $1,000, I'll pay you to make sure you get $5,000. Pull off the shidduch, and this young man, Brent, he's a chevra man, and he pulled the shidduch. And each one gave him 1,000. So he says, so he's, first of all, he wanted to know, they're obligated to pay.
Who obligated?
The person that told them.
Was it an asmach? You have to know who the people were.
How people are. Just do it. I'll make sure you get paid. So the truth is, he's mechuyev to pay. They're mechuyev to pay. Remember, we learned HalachaSrs15. If I say work for him, and I'll pay you, schar cholai, I have to pay you.
If there's a kinyan,
you don't need a kinyan. You don't need to convert. He didn't have cheshik to do the shidduch to work on it, and he was embarrassed, and it's a family man. He didn't have cheshik to work, but he did it. And money is always enticing. I always tell people in Yiddish, there's a saying where a little money doesn't do, a lot of money does. A bissel Geld kann nicht stehen, a sach Geld can always accomplish, always. So $5,000 for a young newlywed, it's quite enticing. So they have to pay. So I asked him, did you ask them? No, they should come. I says, this is your mistake. He says, you have to go. You can't. Often young people do this. If you really believe that that's what he said, I always tell people, I'm not sure what was said. But, it could be the guy says, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. I don't know what he said, don't worry what. But if it's the way you're saying, he says, I'll make sure you get paid $5,000, you have to go tell him. You can't walk around with a grudge. And if you don't tell him, it's your loss. The guy thinks that you didn't ask him because you don't want it.
maybe he thinks you got paid.
Or maybe you got paid. He says they know. But that doesn't make a difference. You have to ask. And if you don't ask, it's, I don't think, because there are probably things, it's a mitzvah to do a shidduch. Maybe you don't want the money. So you have to, and if not, then you have no reason to pay a grudge. Being shy and inhibited is not an excuse to bear a grudge and so on. You understand? Why is he walking around? Because he himself is shy. You know what I mean? Shy to go over to the guy and he feels inhibition to approach. That's not an excuse that you should bear a grudge. You have to understand, people think you didn't come to me. Maybe you did a Shem Shemaim, whatever people, they come to pay. You learned Daf Yomi, guys, Daf Yomi? Do you know what it says? by Klei Midyam, the Gemara says that Klal Yisrael donated the loot. Klei Kimas, we just had Daf Yomi, all the jewelry. What? So Moshe Rabbeinu asked, what did you sin? So I asked, why did Moshe Rabbeinu chosh this sin? Who comes gives money on their own? All of a sudden, he knocks on the door and a guy gives money on his own. Guy gives money on his own, there's something very fishy. I quickly tell you a story. I think I mentioned the story. A guy came and he tells me he wants to donate $250,000 to the ladies' mikveh. We'd done the ladies' mikveh. I don't know who the guy is, and sounded to me extremely fishy.
Send them to me always.
Yeah. Guy's coming, I have no idea, in Israeli. And I'm talking to him, and as I'm talking to him, something smells terrible wrong. And then he tells me, and I'm really Nishmas, his mother-in-law, and Sapirim Torah. And then he finally tells me, you know what, can you get me a ticket to go to Eretz Yisrael? I said to him, I thought you have cash $250,000.
Israel to Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah, I says, what was that about? You know, is something very fishy here? He got angry, he stormed out of the house. Then I hear, 2 weeks later, I hear they went to one of the rich people in the town, some of you know, and he pulled the wool over this guy's eyes and he got 3 tickets. And he looked at the money and it was $250,000 counterfeit money. So when I don't know how he figured out he first came to me. I said to him, to me, a guy comes to me and he wants to donate money. You know, you rabbis know, you know, any Chabad people raises money, till you get $1 out of someone, till you get something amount of guys willing to give you $250,000 is very fishy. Let's have the rule of money, it doesn't go that way. Okay, Zug the Machaber. Mirul dun apsile mach besinne ve kreuve. Zug the Machaber. Bezden shel gimel, shoy echem hem ger, as a pusse luden le Yisrael. He cannot judge for Yisrael. He says, Elim koise imoy, his mother, oy imoy over mi Yisrael.
And he's still called a ger.
Then he could. The ger, yeah, but the Sma says a very important halacha. Sma says only if he was forced to come to Bezdin. That means that, you know, but if today it's a zavlua, so I mean, each one chooses a dayan, or they both choose to go. I once had a story.
I'm confused. What are we saying over here?
A dayan cannot be a ger. It's a gzeres hakosef. I mean, what type of a dayan? A dayan who could force you to come to the Torah. That means a city appoints a Dayanim or 3 people who force a person to go to the Torah. A ger cannot be that. But a ger is allowed to be a dayan if both of you choose him to be a dayan. It's only when there's a din, a city appointed a dayan.
Can I say someone that has a non-Jewish father is in the same category?
Same category.
We have Dayanim now that can force you to come to Beis Din?
No, we don't. Not here. In that soul they have.
What's the
The
rationale?
Rabbanut could force your person to come to Bezdin, yes?
Every Shabbat can only be a Yid.
Sam tuson lecho melech v'kerev v'chechu. So it has to be kerev v'chechu. But again, I had over here in the city. There was a guy who's a ger who lives someplace around here. Rabbi Miller, was a ger tzedek Rabbi Miller.
Yeah.
So anyways, there was a Torah many years ago, and a Rav comes to me and he says to me, you don't have to listen to that in Torah. Why? He's a ger. I says, yeah, but he's not a dayan. They chose, the both students chose that he should be one of the Dayanim. It says before the Elchonon, then I found out the rule is, as I've said this before, the loser always becomes a big Talmud Chacham. Figures out ways. That's the clown. The winner, the business tzaddikim, gemirim, kedoshim, with all the loser, they're corrupt and they don't know halacha. That's the rule always. All of a sudden he figured out that api halacha, ger is only possible in Rabbanut, l'moshel, where they have a koyach to force someone. You can't have a ger tzedek to force. But if they both said, let's choose him for dying, that's not a problem. That's b'chol not a problem. Okay, the ger donas chavera ger, the kid donas fan the ger, afa pishenim Yisrael. That yes, a ger to be judge or the gerim, that's okay. That could day, but not a the Rashi is psukim for this. Mamzer for the shloshta mamzerim hareli kshein lud in the chol.
You just said the loser said this anyway.
Yeah, well, they always call them mamzerim. But but a mamzer is kusha to be dayanim. So it's a moiridige pachadik mamzer tamut chochem koidim kain gula amuritz. So very moiridige zach. People don't realize. Could have a guy who's a kohen gudel with all the kibudim, but if he's a mamzer, what do you say? Amoritz, mamzer tam kohen going gudel amoritz. He's before kohen gudel amoritz. So that's what. So Emes a mamzer if he's shlosh mamzerim, he says, ilik sheiluden chol im hoi kol echem hem v'chein im hoi kol echem hem sim ab achas mein of kusher, blind the 1 hour is also kusher, aber sim ab shtei ein of pusel. So exactly a kosov that's possible. They bring down the chroinem, but if you need glasses, it's now called sima. You need glasses, that doesn't make a person blind. What do you say?
You see.
Doesn't make a difference, as long as you could see.
What about you see like these great gedolim, maybe they used to be able to see, but they get old, they lose their eyesight.
Depends how bad. You can't see nothing, depends.
You lose it?
No, glasses is nothing. It has to be like Yankov Avini. Yitzchak, everything was black. The Zohar says, what's the difference between Yaakov's blindness and Yitzchak? Yitzchak was, everything was dark, was black. Yankov was, he saw the figures, he couldn't figure out who they are. But that's also blindness. I forgot there's a name for that. But if a person, you come close, he sees who you are, that's not...
So it means, just to clarify, it means that at the time of the Din Torah, or whatever it is,
should be able to recognize who is who. Right. He has to be 18. So the first shit the holds that he has to be, it's based on the Gemara, has to be at least 18 years old. Why? Says the Sma. I wanted to show you the Sma. Does he geve beguvrim? You got a dayan has to be tough. Very, very important. I like to, I watched from all the years that, you have to be able to be, because someone called me up, there's a din Torah in town, and they asked me, what do? Everyone is screaming at each other. One Baal Din says, but it doesn't happen. I say, see, the difference I told them by you is that you are the boiler for one side. Come to me, I say, if you scream, goodbye Charlie, I'm leaving. You know what I mean? All you have to say once. But you have to say it in a stern voice. You gotta be tough. See, when people bullies, the only way to deal with a bully is to bully them back. That's a klal I've learned. Bullies are very intimidated to be bullied.
You got to be 18 in order to be a bully.
So that's what the Shema says. An 18-year-old could be a bully. Cannot be gever be given. But you sometimes, unfortunately, you could be 50 years old or 60 years old. You don't know how to speak. You don't know how to be assertive. You say in English, assertive, like. Yesham sheinu l'dineven na v'hevishtav Yesham the ben yid give malchus shefelo lo hevishtai saras ma'ir dik. It's based on the sugya. There's one opinion holds he could be, but he has to know. We're talking about his guy. He knows the halachas. It's a rarity, but in history we found that the Remo became Rav of Kruke. He was 18 years old, and Kruke was a Ir Embe Yisur, was a big city, and a big Tamil Chachamim. He was only 18 years old, the Remo. Imagine. Lebruza ben Azariah, according to Bavli, was 18. According to the Shalmi, he's only 16 years old.
Shouldn't the question be whether or not a person has the physical capabilities, mental capabilities of doing it?
Yeah, that's what. No. Your kasha is a valid kasha, but who is going to judge that?
But 18 seems arbitrary.
Yeah, but who's going to judge that someone has the capability? These things are very difficult. Yourself how to interpret it. Most people he looks like a tough guy and he looks like a nice guy, and Chazal said this is the number we feel that according to the Sma, guy is 18.
So what's the relevance of the number 18?
Usually you get tough at 18.
I mean, where do we see that? That 18.
It's a Gemara. It's a Gemara in Bava Basra. What does say it in Bava Basra? Muhammad says that till 18 he doesn't understand Dina Mumanis. But it's clear what the Poskim add, the Chronim add, the Rumetumim. Yeah. See, one of the things about a Dayan I watch, he has to understand business. There are many people who come to the Dayanim. I had once a guy come with a Tayin. The Tayin was so confused. They didn't know how the business works. You have to... there are people who could be big Talmidei Chachamim, but I don't know why they don't get business deals well. They don't deal with what it means that they made a condition, and you have to understand business too. Like hearing a case, you have to know how to listen to the whole case and know which is some nonsense or which is not. You have to. It's very.
Out of curiosity, if you're in business, are you allowed to question them when they're presenting a toy or?
Of course. It's not the court. I drill. Of course we cross it now. It's not the court. Of course not. I just had it in Torah, and I was cross-examining him from HalachaSrs15. Okay, let me just move on. This is a cotton. How do we paskin? I don't remember how we paskin, but it's not kamantat negeya. Okay. Isha Sila Luden. Many years ago, the YU was busy to explain this. I don't know, this was a big thing in the media. Isha is supposed to be a dime. So let me tell you, I asked my permission once from my wife to say the story over. A lady calls up, and she tells my wife the story. She's crying, hysterical. Tells my wife that in our community, someone had a balbus, has a son in Lakewood, and he rents out the house much cheaper. He tells everyone, I'm renting you my house. He has a house that he bought for his son, but every time he comes Ben Izmana, Ben Izmana comes for Pesach, Sukkot, he has the standard argument with his son. His son wants to go back to learn. His father says, stay, so he says, listen, tells the guy person, I'm renting you this is the beginning of the winter. I have no idea what's going to be. Maybe Pesach is I'm going to convince. If it doesn't, you can live there as long for this amount of rent. It was a few $100s less than the going rate. The rent of the house. So she asked him, what's the chances that he's going to stay? My son is an action as I am, so chances is very little. Maybe 4%, 98%, 98%. But I want to just tell you, in case something happens, chances are very little. So chances are so little, she went, she painted a house, she had a baby, gets a phone call, Chalamoid Pesach. She calls my wife crying. I come home, you got to do something. What? She tells me the story. I said, you know what, normally I have to hear the other side of the story. There's nothing to hear even over here. She was very honest. She said that, the two, even just 2%, that was the deal. My wife says, how could that be? This lady is crying, and she's going to move out, and with a new baby. And so I tell my wife, now you know why you cannot be a Dayan. It's a woman work with feelings. She heard nothing about the halacha. I remember listening to my wife, I noticed she didn't hear nothing what the halacha is, nothing but the deal. My wife is, deals with money. Didn't see the whole business deal. What she saw is never a newlywed with a baby, who painted the house, he asking them to move out. That's all she saw. That's why Chazal said that's a good dash into posik. So Tosfos asked the kasha, how come the Voida Hanavia paskin shalas? So Tosfos says that many Rishonim answer that he only paskin isav heter, not kedin Torah. A lady, believe it or not, could be a paisik. The Sma wife, the Shchosh was the Sma. The Sma wife, the son of the Sma, I want to tell you a very cute story. The son of the Sma writes that his mother was a very big Talmud Chacham. She helped my father write the Sefer. No, Rashi's daughter, so the Rashi's daughter wrote film probably is not true, because what it says a lady's not born, but it's a legend that she wrote film. But Rashi's daughter helped him write the parish, that's known. She helped him on what?
Yalta was a big Talmud.
Yeah, not Yaltza, I mean Brudia. Yaltza was a tough lady. Brudia, but knew 3,000 brises by heart. But anyway, so he brings down the Sma that my mother was Machadish, Chidish, and Hilchas Nida, Hilchas Chala, and Hilchas at Lukas Haner. Why was she Machadish, Hilchas, and Lukas Nerois? The Shabbos, we make a broch, we light the candle first, we Ashkenazim, then we make the brocha. The Sfardim make the brocha first, and we do that. Why? Because you make the brocha in Mekabel Shabbos. So she argued, Yom Tov, we should make the brocha first. Yom Tov is where you light a light. So the Megavurim brings down, and the Megavurim says a very sharp version, Ein chochma leisha eile bepelach. The solution of Gemara. When it says a yuma, someone asked her, Blazer asked a lady asked her Blazer something, the cheto egel, and he says, Ein chochma leisha eile bepelach. So to me, I asked him, what's the answer? You know what? I'll tell you what the Gemara says. A lady came to the Blazer Gudel. She asked the Blazer Gudel, why the Chet Egel was so terrible, why only 3,000 people died? Only 3,000 people died, she asked. You know, the Chet Egel, it seems from the Pasuk was such a terrible thing, and only 3,000 people died. Should have been who knows how many people died. So I think what it says, that's what the famous Gemara. Anyway, so Rabbi Lezer answered, Ein chachma leisha, ein ele bepelach. The wisdom of a lady is ein bepelach. That's what the Gemara says. So the Gemara, to me, they asked the Rebbe, what's the teretz of the kasha? It's a good kasha. We don't know the teretz. And to something Gemara. But I want to tell you something, that all the achronim agree to the wife of the Sma, besides Chabad. Chabad Yom Tov, you light, then you make a bracha. But all the Achronim, Seifen, the Nadi Behida, the Chachach, Masuda, Mishnah Berurah, all agree, the Magen Avraham, the Shulchan quotes the Magen Avraham, but all the Achronim, so I always joke about it, see, all the Achronim took the covet of the wife of the Sma. And the meaning in Klal Yisrael, we are consistent. But the Samt, the Haigun had a daughter who gave a shear, and they put a curtain. What do you say?
So you're saying like
the non-Chabad people make a bracha and then light. Like the Sma.
We do like look, we do the same thing.
Yeah, you do it all the time, but that's what the Magen Avraham held. But the Chayrim all argue on the Magen Avraham, and they give right for the Sma. So I'm saying it's a cute thing, that all say the Sma wife was right. Magen Avraham has a Pesar, I don't remember now offhand. There was a Pesaraya, and they all disagree with the Raya, and they say he was a... The High Guan had a daughter who was brilliant, and she gave a sheet, and there was a curtain in front of her. Gave a sheet.
How long ago was it?
High Guan was
1,200 years ago.
1,200 years ago, approximately. And they bring her Chadushim. Not Stam she gave.
So what are we saying? That she can't be part of
She can't paskin in Torah, but Issa v'heter she could paskin.
That was the Vayra Hanavir, coming back.
The Vayra Hanavir. The Vayra, it says a pasuk.
You have a Shaila and
Ilchas Shabbos and Ilchas Kashas, the Vayra Hanavir could paskin. But Hilchas, to be a dying, she cannot. And the Be'er Goylel, if you see the Be'er Goylel you have in front of you, the tiny Be'er Goylel.
Being a dying, it's Chosh Mishpah.
What?
It's Chosh Mishpah, essentially.
Right. Chosh Mishpah, she can't.
Right.
The moment. The Be'er Goylel wants to bring down from the Achronim that no, I don't know who he quotes over here. The Voide Lois Dina Elemanam Inama Api Ashchina Shana. That even din Teiris. You hear everybody say, Avagav the Lois Shemami Shanucha the Haruis Shu Hoiso.
what?
It was a Haruis Shu Hoiso.
Paskening from us as a Neviah, even though I know we cannot pass.
But Haruis.
You didn't we say before that like certain, let's say a ger, which really can't be a dayan, if I choose if we're in agreement that we're going to use the ger as our dayan, then
Yeah, two people could choose a Dayanim and
let's say
Vada.
a woman that's called
Yeah.
Baba, Sarah,
Yes,
something like
yes,
that.
you could accept it. If you want to accept it to be not a problem.
Okay, so that's
No, but the Dayanim was not. The Dayanim, the Pasuk really says she judged Claudius. So Toy says the Kasha, how could Dayanim So Toy's answer was only Isavahet. He brings down, I didn't have a chance to look at Beirut, he brings down that no, it was Harushu. I told you, we pass him for Harushu, we do say that they have a right to do it. So the Dayanim was, you know whose wife she was? Advaita was the wife of Burik ben Avinayam. As the Israelis like Barak, they don't want to call him Burak. We call him Burak ben Avinayam. Okay. Okay, Zug the Machaber, hey. So Bekitzer, a lady cannot be a dying. That's, we don't need explanations, we don't have to emphasis for the world. That's a fact, a woman
She cannot be an aid also.
she cannot be an ed, she cannot be a dying. That's a Kseiris Akusiv. We don't have to figure out all the time why. We I assume, because as I said, women work on feelings very much. That's, they get very emotional. See, and it truthfully is that a dying you can't not listen to emotions. There are people very soft-hearted, have a very hard time. Because there are people who know how to pull the strings in English? How do you say pull them on? They know how to put up a show and, there are people who know how to do a very good job. So that's what, a dying has to be able to see, just the case. No. Schön. Sag dem Chaber, yesh omrim, the shtiye yaim turlud and dinim omanis. So if someone drinks the wine, Elchonon, could drink. It's very difficult to understand this. I have a very hard time. But it says there's a yesh omrim that way, because we paskin, the dinim, isavahet, you have to be very careful. I never drink wine. Even though I drink wine, it takes me a long time to drink a lot of wine to be well. But Motzei Shabbos, I always make Avdola on grape juice. I know people are going to come with shalas. If you drink a revius wine, you're not allowed to pass on shalas. And Chosh Mishpat says, yes, Amrim, but very interessant that you're allowed to. Very interesting.
Does it make a difference what the wine was back then compared to now?
No, it doesn't make a difference. Anyone's a kohen is also not a, you're not allowed to duchen.
Why is it saying yesh later? Someone argue?
Not argue, some argue, yes.
Can't drink one Friday.
Yes.
Can't drink wine for...
But I want to tell you, Chivas Harashba, what happens is, sometimes people knock on the door Friday night, women have to ask shalas. So, HalachaSrs15. Now look you have a Taz in front of you, there's a Taz there. You have Taz on the page?
Yeah, we have the class. Bottom right.
So you see the Taz, Chivas Harashba. You see what it says there?
Beginning, the top one.
I have a different print. You have it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Chivas Harashba, the Sem Mechir, the Chol Shinus Daite Kalab Sak mit the Lohiris. There's a meta of Lewis of a heter. That means often people come with shalas that is not such shalas. I had a lady knock on the door Friday night and a shala of chatzitza this Friday night. It wasn't even a shala. So I drank wine. I made kiddush on a simple shala. It's something that you need to think about.
How long do you have to wait?
You have to wait till whatever effect wine had on you, it wore off.
Practically, there's going to be shilas at all different times. Someone comes out to your house after having crisis,
You can. You know what they did in Yerushalayim? In Yerushalayim, they used to have a goydel the Rabbanim, and they would the middle diskin when he was Rav, he would make a seder, a very quick seder, and lay down and then wait for people because there was a lot of shalas in Yerushalayim. The reason is very simple. People lived by two. You know what I mean? They lived and the poverty was so great. So it was shalas galore. And I find myself that since the young people move into big apartments, the hilchos, mixing the dishes is less common. It is that way. There's more space and less, when things get, And it was, you read stories about incredible shalas they used to have. So the middle diskin would make a quick seder, lay down, and sleep a little bit, and to be awake. So anyone had a shalah to pass shalas. But the Rashba says important halacha that something that's clear. If someone asks you a shalah that you know is not a shalah, you know you worked on it. There's nothing to talk about. Then it's okay. Something that you have to think about. There's another interessant halacha. If often when you're exhausted, when I come from a trip, it takes me a few days to get back to myself. I'm not allowed to pass in them. Because when you're very tired, your mind is not clear. See, a Rav, lahavdil, I find that by doctors too, they have to be all the time alert. Don't have time to not to be, because people always ask shalas, like it's a great responsibility. Okay. Let's move on. Now, this is a whole sugya, ain't Ed Nasadain. I was going to wait till the end, and I want to reiterate, because so many people called me today. I don't know if you know what's going on in New York. There was a guy who, I forgot his name, Weberman, right? Yeah. And he was, what is it called? Not indicted. He was found guilty. So people called me. Even one of the Lubavitcher from the Crown Heights Watch called me. So we spoke about it twice here. I just want to try to make something simple. If we would follow only the way the Torah says, there's a story about this Kletsky boy that was murdered. I forgot the murderer's name. And what is that? Levi Aaron, right? So if we would follow the Torah, Levi Aaron would be walking the streets today. Why? There was no two Edom. There was circumstance evidence. The Gemara says, Rabbi Shimon Meshutach saw a guy chasing another person. Famous Gemara, Shimon Meshutach saw a guy chase another guy into the Mara, to a cave, and he walks into the cave, and the guy's holding a knife, and the knife is bloody. And he said to him, it's either I killed him or you killed him. It wasn't me. And it wasn't me. But there's nothing I could do for you because I didn't see you kill him. I just see a bloody knife. But he said, as they were talking, a snake came. That only happens if it's a Shimon Shutach is. Snake came, and bit him, and took care of him. But theoretically speaking, this guy, the murderer of Levi, what do you say his name? He should be walking the streets, and there's no such a thing. That's what the Rashba says. When people ask you, just say there can never be law in order if we would work with the guidelines of the Torah. How are you going to take over a molester off the streets or a murderer like this? No one murders in front of a person, and with hasrua, a pitoira, you have to be masra, and it has to be tochidei dibba. You know what tochidei dibba means? He has to warn him. And how do you say Tochidei? In the 4 seconds, 3 seconds afterwards, if you waited 5 seconds, you can do nothing to him. The issues that I am Chaim Blood. So there has to be. It's not perfect. So what? It's not perfect. Maybe the guy is innocent. It's hard for me to believe innocent. A little bit that I read, but give the job. Oh, but that's how it is. There has to be a system. There's no system that's perfect. There's no system that's even with Edom. Shimon Meshutach, the story of Shimon Meshutach. Shimon Meshutach's son was killed for no reason. They hired false Edom. Right. So there has to be. There's no way that it could be law and order. And another thing what I found people today when they were talking to me is people have a hard time believing that such people roam around. They think that a molester has to be, in Yiddish they say an expression, has to have horns, head in it. He could be sweet, nice, talks gently, family man, he knows how to make you smile. He has his Yetzer Hara is, he's evil. I don't like to call it uncontrollable because he has a big Yetzer Hara and he doesn't control it.
I'll also add as a prosecutor that circumstantial evidence in our courts is usually way better evidence. So when people say circumstantial evidence, it's only circumstantial. People like to say that. Typically, it's much better evidence for us. That we like it better because circumstantial evidence leads to one logical conclusion. Other evidence, you can say, well, maybe they're making it up. when someone says, this is what I
Yeah, but the Torah says, okay, I see.
I'm just saying, that people,
Yeah,
Again, they only have 1/8,
and circumstantial
part of the
evidence.
2 by us.
yeah. But I'm just saying, but Lamaisa, you can't have law and order. It's like, I told you there was a story in Borough Park. A guy used to break into people's houses. They couldn't figure out how he figures out why the safes are broken in. Finally, one guy, he was the guy who puts in the safes for everyone. He comes, he knew the number. There was a big fight amongst the Rabbanim. So one guy who spoke to me after, I says, I told him, if you don't put the guy into jail, you're overlav in the Torah. Because he'll never stop.
What's the law?
The lav is Losam Damarachel. Losam Damarachel is even the Mamonis. No, it has to be law and order. Like, it's...
No sense that if they know someone murdered and no one saw, no anything, you lock them up in a room and you feed him food and his stomach blows up. I don't know.
Yeah.
You see, there is such a tziyas of.
Yeah, but the Rambam seems by the Tzicha. Now the Rambam explains that the Tzicha is a separate chiyuv of Bezdin to make sure that the Tzicha is taken care of. That's a special chiyuv, the Rambam learns. The Rambam says the Tzicha, Bezdin is never allowed to overlook the Tzicha.
You say the same thing as molestation, is what
Molestation, I've said it once we're here. Let's take out the word sex out of molestation. Let's say there's a guy walking around, he goes into yeshivas, he puts poisoning into the food, and 10 children of the school are ruined for life. They cannot eat anymore, they have to be a special diet, they never maybe could get married, sick for life. We would be boiling anger. Once sex gets involved, sex is very confusing, and very uncomfortable, and very, people get, but if you take the sex out of the same story, I spoke to people that people who are molested, they're ruined for life sometimes. They can't function. So you take it out. Imagine a guy would come into yeshiva and would do it. Every yeshiva there was a guy, and if 10 a year, we would no one would care for anything. We would just smell choshit, someone would pounce on them. Comes to sex, people are uncomfortable to confront, and I don't know what it is. Seems like it's so discomfort for people, and people also either don't want to believe, they have a Yetzirah not to believe. It's very interesting that Shmuel Hanovi, it always strikes me. Shmuel said to the Rabbi Shloim, if I'm going to go crown David, Shaul is going to kill me. You know the famous story?
Yeah.
The Bansham tells Shmuel, go crown David. And so Shmuel says to the Bansham, how can I do it? Shmuel is going to kill Eich Eilach V'shuma Shul V'hergeni. Now, Shmuel was a tzaddik. Chazal say, Ketinik ben Yoimai. He was an incredible tzaddik. But Shmuel understand what it means. You take the rabbinate away from someone. You know what I mean? He's a rav of a place, he's the king, and you want to take it away, he's going to kill me. The Bansham says, you're right. You know what? You're going to tell Shul you're going to bring a korban. That's the Chazal Darsh from that, Shchich HaZekah. I mean, people somehow think that people have a crazy Yetzirah, and they're not willing to work on the Yetzirah, and they're guilty. I hate when people tell me they can't control themselves. It never happened, Mil Shu, someone molested in front of everyone. He was out of control, and he had to do it. And if someone is standing there, he doesn't do it. So he is in control. He doesn't, he just doesn't want to control it. Anyways, I'm not saying I didn't follow the case. You followed the case well, the details, and according to you, the circumstance evidence. The only thing that people explained to me, he was over Isayicha, there's in Greusen. Even he was murdered. That's what I was told. What?
He was murdered.
Yeah, that's what I was told, that he was murdered. Someone told me he should this one. Yichad, he was over Azoyev in Greusen.
Drove 10 hours to upstairs.
No, but he locked her in the office with the...
Yeah.
So, if a person's not makben Isayicha, okay. As a rabbi, I always leave the door wide open. I never know who comes in, what do I know? They're going to say something. One of my babatim wants to put in the camera, so no one could say anything, you know what I mean? What did you say?
Big issue today. Rabbanim today have to be very careful.
Yeah.
There's an issue with that in London right now. my old Maggid Shiurim.
Okay. Yesh Omre, the Shusi Yain, Mitur Lud Nadina Mumanis. So, see, that case too, you know, people have a hard time believing. You probably had a hard time believing.
Very hard.
But you have to be open with yourself and know that there's a lot of women who, I don't know the details, but it looks like a lot of women came forward, and it's really, he had a weakness. He has a Yitzhar. That's it. Look, I you know how I explain this to people? I'll tell you how I explain this to people. I had a guy once come to me in my office, a doctor, and he tells me if I have a sgula for him, he unfortunately has no desire for women. He has feeling homosexual, never acted on it. That's why he's a workaholic. He works in emergency medicine, so he doesn't. But he's mamish. He told me if you open a ladies' magazine, it's like open a catalog. It doesn't mamish goonish. I was like so shocked. Nothing. You know, boss. He says I look at a good-looking man. It's just a big sign for me. We have to look at a lady to say it's in a sign. So there are people who are challenged. This is his challenge. You know, the Rizal has a whole explanation why these people have such challenge. Hold up, explain. So there's a guy who has a Yitzhar to molest. This is whatever. He has a big appetite, but he has to control himself. And it's terrible to walk around thinking, because I hear this from people. I don't know where it comes from, the news, from the going. They don't know how to control themselves. This is what the raid by the goyim is. The Rachmanas, the bottom line is the way you can know a person control himself is the fact is that someone is standing there, the Yitzhar disappears. They don't have the, you know, they could control themselves, but they just don't, and they're uninterested. But you know, it doesn't make a difference. The bottom line is you have to look at it that these people are ruining other people. It's a rishus, you know what I mean? The reason why it's also rishus because there's no one now who doesn't know what it does to children. You know, a guy could have said in the old country, he did something, maybe. Everyone knows, everyone is educated. In Williamsburg too, that they know this is mamish, ruins people.
Regardless of whether or not they can control themselves.
Right. It's just, you know. Okay. Yesh omre shusi yain betur luda din and mumas. Ein ed nasadayin. Now the siga from ein ed nasadayin is a whole sugya later. It doesn't even belong over here really. Mechaber brought it down because I give the beginning over here. You know what ein ed nasadayin means? Ed cannot in the same bezdin. You can't be an ed and a dayin.
Same court case.
Same court. In this case, that I happen to be the ed. The judge saw the case too. See, by the goyim, I was told if you even heard about the case, or was, the Torah says that he cannot testify, but he could sit on this case. Let's say he saw Riva Mazik Shimon. He could sit. If other people say this, he could sit there. Verstehst? And we don't.
Not that he testified that he witnessed the event, even if he doesn't.
And Ed Nasdam means if he says Adis. If he doesn't say Adis, if he doesn't say.
Isn't he going to say Edis automatically?
No.
Because if a witness comes in and says something different than he saw, he's automatically in it.
No, but he's going to judge. No, the case is that he's not going to judge the case only of the witness, not of his. This guy said he saw it. So he said even was Mazik Shimon. So I'm not judging because I saw. He's just saying that he was Mazik Shimon.
Yeah, but only in that small circumstance. If Reuben stands up and says, "I never touched him," then the judge who's
Well, doesn't make a difference. You don't need the judge. Two Edom are believed against Reuven. That's the Torah. Reuven says, I didn't bump into him. Shimon says he did bump him. Two Edom come and says did, even though I also saw.
you're someone hits someone in the shoulder. There's 1,000 Edom.
Yeah, well, yeah, they saw. People saw, right? And so even though he saw the Dayan also saw, but since two other Edom are coming, but if there is no Edom, he's the Ed. Mardashan ain't Ed Nasa Dayan. That's a whole sugya in Ksubas and Rosh Hashanah. It's a kosov. It doesn't. It's not. You would have been psukim for it, because the Chazal say about the Rabbanon we pass in Ed Nasa Dayan. That's not so much the Gebas. You know what Kim Shturis means? You know when the authorized the signature. So over there we pass in Ed Nasa Dayan. So anyway, so ein Ed Nasadayim, bedavke Ed Shemeid, kigam in Heid Echad men adiyunim bifnei chaveirav al ma'aseh shirui. He says, testifies, en yuchel it starav imuludim aloy samasa. He can't join them. Av meid, av ein meid, kon sheshloish yudin rueh masa, they saw. But they're not going to testify. Someone else is going to testify. We were there. It was an accident, and we all saw the accident. We all saw the guy hit him. And he says, if they saw by day, nasa dayanim. I'm just going to read the Mechaber because later, if we ever get to it, it's a whole arichas. But there's a din that if they saw by day we paskin ed nasa dain. The Gemara says shaloite shmiya gdoila maria. You ever heard that expression? That means, how can I hear a story better than me seeing the story? It's a famous Gemara. That if I saw it, it's much better than when I hear it from someone. So by day, if I saw the story, since I could have been a dying right away, so I could rely on my testimony. He says, I want to explain something. This is the everyone's bekatza because they leave it for later. But this sugya is a whole sugya later. Bekitzer, a judge, if he saw the story, he could be a dying. That's the main thing the Mechaber wants to bring out. Many people think you saw the story, you heard already. Well, that's not just because I heard. Before a week, this Shabbos, I had a guest over for Chushav Ingeman, a big Talmud Chacham. He lives in Muncie. So he says to me, also asked me about the story. You think it's Emma's? Says, I want to tell you something. I sit in the Toiris and I hear from the streets sometimes when people talk about this case, and and comes to the Torah, the whole thing, and the thing that you thought that guy is this turns out to be the other way around, and mamish lehepach lehepach. You don't have in the news also people say stories, and it comes, the truth is when it comes to the Torah, unless you're there, it's hard for people to imagine that in this case. Most people have a hard time accepting the guy looks like a nice guy, that he could be such a monster. People think that's why people think, he's a nice guy, he's a sweet guy. Remember many years ago, they caught a guy also in the community that he was a molester. And the guy told me it can be. He says, why not? Such a nice guy. How do you know he's a nice guy? He says good Shabbos, good morning to me every time he comes into shul. I mean, I was astounded how he judged the guy. He's a nice guy. So I asked him, how do you know he's a nice guy? Well, he says, every comes into shul, he says to all of us, good morning. So you don't know. What do you know? And it could be he's like a nice guy. It could be he's a great father and a great friend and a great social friend. But he has a Yetzirah, which is very, he doesn't control it. That's not a steer. I'm saying, the Ikor, I'm coming back to Ed Nasadayim. The Mechaber is trying to teach you, just because the Dayanim saw the story, they don't become puzzle. They cannot be the Ed and the Dayan at the same time if it's saw by night. But if just because they know the story doesn't mean they could be puzzle. People have this idea. A jury, if you heard the story before, can it be sit in the jury? No. Right? They have this.
They were involved in the story.
If they heard the story on the news, they could.
Big cases, everybody knows about it. So you're not going to have any jurors to pick.
Oh, so when do they parcel the jury when he knows the story? I thought when the guy knows the story, they parcel him.
If they knew about it, if they know somebody, if they know one of the parties, if they know a lawyer, if they know
That's it.
sometimes they have these stories. They're in the news. Everybody knows about them. The Michael Jackson murder case. Everybody knew about it.
That's a whole thing later. That's a whole thing later. Yeah, we pass can. It says the Mechaber says et should not be the dying. Try not to be the dying. We are very makpid. It shouldn't be. But we're makpid not to. Why are you asking? You saw some?
A few weeks ago during Rambam, and it was just
we pass. The Rambam says et nasadayim by getting.
Yeah.
I'm sure the Rambam passes that way. But we're makpid because by get we have every chumrah. So you're makpid that the tchillah should be separated and shouldn't be that nasadayim.
So at the end of the day, if you have someone who's a dying and he witnesses something, when do you say that he cannot
He could sit on the Torah. The only question is, can he be the Ed and the Dayan, or only the Dayan, or not the Ed?
But it was 3 Dayanim, if he's giving testimony.
So the Shiurim will later learn that someone else is going to sit there just for the testimony. But the bottom line is like you just said. The bottom line is that he just that if a Dayan saw the case, saw it with his own, he could sit on the Din Torah. The question is he going to be the Ed and the Dayan? If he can't be the Ed and the Dayan, he's not going to be the Ed. Someone else is going to be the Ed, and he'll just be the Dayan.
What I'm saying by day?
But the Gemara says, since he could write judge right now, he could judge right now. How could it be that Shmi Gedol Maria? The Gemara has a whole drash.
You can't judge at night?
At night you're not allowed to judge.
We learned in the beginning.
Just learned before that night, like last week, you can't be a judge at night. You can't. Yeah. So, but we're talking about day. So that's okay. We mizmin elahein av be'edus acherim. Ein dunam. Again, this is a whole arichas. It's talking about other edus. The dying was called. That he also can't judge. If he's called in the same case than another Din Torah, you can't judge now and be an ed also. It doesn't have to be this. Not only to our. What happens if they want? You know that they're going to call you for another part of the Din Torah. So you can't. It could be v'chol bedin daraisa, but the derbunan ed nasa dayan. Okay, let me just learn the vav. It's a very important halacha. This happened in Lakewood. There's the Mashgiach in Lakewood who's called Rabbi Solomon. I forgot his first name. Matsuya Salman. So he closed the school because there was allegations against one of the parents that he's a molester. So the guy who ran the school called him to Din Torah. No one wanted to call Solomon to Din Torah. So he found Shloishu Hedyotis, Shloishu Yoshu Krunas. You know what that means? 3, how would you say in English? 3 empty headers. I don't know how you say it in English. So no one wanted to call him. He runs the place, and then he can't close it down. He just said not to send your children. That's all he had to say. Finished. The place closed down. He's not a police department. All he said is that there's allegations about it. It seems to be true. Finished. So the guy went and couldn't get him. They finally got 3 people to send doesn't want to. Does he have to go to Din Torah? This is the question. Now, a guy has a right to call anyone to Din Torah. No one is above the law. So there's a din that if the Dayanim are very chashiv, you know what I mean, then he has to go. If not, there's no such a thing that a person is above the law. The only one who's above the law is a Melech Yisrael, not even Melech David. The David the Melech said to the Rabbi Shalom, I want all my children to be able to be called to Din Torah. So Malchus based David, called in Malchus, so you don't call because they are murderers. They're like the mafioso. That's what the Gemara says. Because if you call them in Torah, the outcome is not going to be what they like. They're going to... But otherwise, a person could be called to Din Torah. It doesn't just because he's a Rebbe or it doesn't make a difference. It says, Misha Tom lo yisidun fin dayin shikutim meni, ein hadayin yuchal lekoif aleile chefunov. You can't force him leile chefunov, ele bechamfa man de ikuus mechakima from the chomim ein benai. The Chronim explained what it means, that we have to get all the big Talmidei Chachamim to come to the Din Torah. That means, let's say that story. He has the right to come to Din Torah, but he's not mechuyev to go to these 3. He should get the biggest Talmidei Chachamim in the city, and they'll judge the situation. But there's no one who is above the law. I think in America you could call the president to court, right? No one is above the law. What did he say? What did you say?
This is a big issue in the presidential prerogatives. You can certainly call him, but he may not come until after he's out of office.
Okay.
Depends on the case.
Anyways, this is what the Gemara says.
So
That,
one second, so if this guy put together these 3 Dayanim, Rabbi Solomon could say,
You can't,
these guys are.
no, he should take the Gedolim in the city,
Who should, Rabbi Solomon?
the people in the city. See, it's an obligation of the city people that there should be law and order.
Yeah, why does he do it? Why do they bring him to the Din Torah? I don't understand.
So he just tell people not to send the children to this school. So it's a gruma, just told.
So he didn't do anything wrong.
Oh.
And if he doesn't have to go there.
But he has to show up.
They protect each other, in theory.
Yeah, but
It's not the idea of not being above the law.
no, well, if the Elchonon wouldn't
Why do you have
protect,
to get 3 Leidegers? You have to get 3 Leidegers.
no one else wanted because they held that he's the right to say it. If a guy would have called me,
Isn't there a premise that he should answer that?
yeah, he has to answer. It was not right. Why people didn't want to? Because we don't have a bezin kvua. No one has to do anything, which is also
That's
wrong.
the issue, right.
The issue is that's also wrong.
So in this particular case. he
Yes,
was
the
above
truth
the law.
is that he's not above the law, and it would have been a bezin kivua. Bezin would
Make him.
have to call him.
So this is like the issue they're having in London right now, because this rabbi's a big rabbi. They brought him before 6 big rabbanim in London, but they said that,
They brought him. He didn't want to come. No.
he went in front of them,
No.
he signed the paper. But now,
He
the
didn't
other
sign.
big rabbi, the Haredi rabbi from Stafford Hill, he said he's gonna get the Eid Haredis. They're gonna set up a separate bezdin just for this. But the reality is they have big rabbanim in London.
Yeah, they have.
they never called, they never called.
Okay.
It's not
Rabbi
as
said.
simple